not just the crypto economy. At the House Agriculture Committee, we heard testimony from numerous stakeholders about innovative ways in which developers and entrepreneurs are leveraging blockchain build projects and services using blockchains and digital assets. The certainty and protections provided through the Clarity Act will lead to the development of a new generation of services, tools, and systems. Now, I'm excited for that future to happen here in the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, Congress has a historic opportunity here today to act. With clarity, we can pass legislation that protects consumers and ensures that the United States remains at the forefront of technological innovation. These are not mutually exclusive goals, they are mutually reinforcing goals. By supporting clarity, we can create a safer, more transparent, and more accessible environment for digital assets. I urge all of my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of nearly 44 million American consumers who have invested in, traded, or used digital assets. That's 1 in 5 Americans. The public interest in these markets is already here, and it's not going away. Mr. Speaker, I rise today. There is a gap in regulation for the digital commodity asset market. Our work here today could begin to provide the protections that American investors are accustomed to in traditional financial markets regulated by the CFTC. Regardless of whether Congress acts, these markets will continue to grow. The only question is whether we will begin the hard work of developing regulation or refuse to begin. The Clarity Act would put consumer protections in place for the first time for this industry. Consumers will finally be protected by the same sort of guardrails that protect investors in other sectors of the economy. Segregation of customer deposits, consumer disclosures, mandatory record keeping, and examination by regulators. We do not want another FTX. The 2022 collapse of the world's third largest cryptocurrency exchange wiped out an estimated $8 to $10 billion in value, leaving American consumers holding the bag. The Clarity Act would have largely mitigated or avoided this crisis entirely. Former Biden administration CFTC Chairman Russ Benham yesterday testified before the Senate Agriculture Committee. Quote, what he said, inaction will only result in greater risk to our financial markets and investors through lack of market transparency, fraud, market manipulation, corruption, and conflicts of interest, lack of action. Now, let me address the elephant in the room. The first family's involvement with digital assets and personally profiting from them. It's rightfully raised questions of impropriety and alarmed government ethics watchdogs. The first family's personal financial involvement in other sectors, such as telecoms, should ring alarm bells as well, loud and clear as it comes to ethics in our country. There is a time and place for holding the powerful accountable, and that must happen. We should address executive branch corruption independently, and it should apply to all sectors. Today, we must focus on regulation and protections for consumers, because today, 1 in 5 Americans and growing lack those protections, lack any guardrails. It's our job to start putting them in place. Is this bill perfect? No. Can it be improved upon? Absolutely. And I encourage my Senate colleagues to keep working those outstanding issues. This bill deserves our support, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I was remiss with my opening comments not to thank my agriculture partner, Ranking Member Angie Craig, for her leadership and work together on this issue, but also our Financial Services Chair, French Hill, my good friend Don Davis, Whip Emmer, Brian Stile, and so many more. There was just such a strong bipartisan leadership partner team. I now yield to the gentleman from Iowa, a member of the House Agriculture Committee, Mr. Feenstra, for 1.5 minutes.
The gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank our Chairman Thompson for bringing this bill forward. It's an amazing bill. I rise today in strong support of the Clarity Act. The increasing adoption of digital assets and the use of blockchain technologies can grow our economy and provide American families with a new opportunity to grow wealth. However, under President Biden, digital assets were attacked, which crushed innovation and created uncertainty for businesses. Fortunately, President Trump is working to make America the crypto capital of the world. We want digital asset innovation to happen in America and crypto jobs to be created in America without ceding ground to foreign countries. That's why we must pass the Clarity Act to spur innovation and support economic growth by providing clear rules of the road for digital assets in the United States. This bill establishes clear roles for the SEC and CFTC, which prevents agencies from overreach and confusion, provides consumer protections through greater transparency and accountability in the marketplace, and fosters innovation by providing a pathway for digital asset firms to operate legally and work with confidence, encouraging digital asset innovation to remain in the U.S. The Clarity unlocks economic growth, global competitiveness, and financial opportunity for all. I urge my colleagues to support this bill and put America first in the race to lead global digital asset marketplace.
Gentleman's time has expired.
For our country. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. The gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized.
I yield 3 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of North Carolina, Mr. Don Davis, the ranking member of the House Agriculture Subcommittee on Commodity Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development.
Gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 3 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 3633, known as the Clarity Act. I'm honored to serve as a co-lead on this legislation alongside Chairman Thompson, Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Craig, Subcommittee Chair Johnson, and so many others who came to the table in good faith to get this done. Let me also take a moment to thank the staff, both the majority and the minority staff. They put so many hours working on this. I know I was up late one night. It was probably midnight. So I really commend the team. And they helped work on a very complex issue here that's before us, and to help shape a bipartisan product that reflects the seriousness of the moment. This bill reflects compromise, collaboration, and months of work to craft the regulatory framework that meets the moment. Because the truth is, we can't afford to fall behind. Right now, we are at a crossroads. The digital asset industry is growing, evolving, changing the way people around the world engage with financial markets and emerging technologies. But without a clear regulatory structure in place, we're seeing innovation move overseas, not because our talent isn't here, because the rules aren't here. The Clarity Act provides us with an opportunity then to change that, to lead, to establish thoughtful and balanced guardrails that support innovation, protect consumers, and foster confidence in our markets. You see disclosures, reports. You can't commingle funds. Dealing with so many provisions, anti-fraud, manipulation. But let me be clear. The bill isn't perfect. I've been vocal about that too. I remain concerned about the absence of meaningful conflict of interest provisions dealing with the executive branch. It doesn't matter who occupies the White House. Bottom line, whoever is in the White House, we need clear standards that ensure public trust is never compromised. Also, remain concerned about adequate resources for the CFTC. Yes, this bill, and I'm acknowledging, provides more flexibility to deal with hiring, but we also need to see more resources because we're asking the CFTC to take on a major role here in this. Thank you.
Gentlemen.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the 118th Congress, we passed FIT 21 with overwhelming bipartisan support. The Clarity Act builds on this work. Let's pass the Clarity Act and send a strong message to the American people and the world that the United States will lead in building a forward-looking digital economy. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Minnesota has reserved. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from Iowa, a member of the Commodity Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development Subcommittee, Mr. Nunn, for 1 minute.
The gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Thompson, as well as Ranking Member Craig. This is truly a bipartisan opportunity to help America deliver as a crypto capital for the entire planet. As a member of both the Ag Committee and the Financial Services Committee, I've been able to see this issue on both sides. Commodities versus securities, CFTC versus the SEC. And in my home state of rural Iowa, we know commodities. Corn, soybeans, hogs. The CFTC does this very well. And in downtown Des Moines and on the main streets of hometowns across Iowa, our banks handle stocks and bonds. Securities, those handled by the SEC. That level of clarity works. But when it comes to digital assets, the lines have become blurred, confused, and overly burdensome. That regulatory uncertainty doesn't just cost dollars, it costs jobs, innovation, and America's global leadership. This act, this clarity, is exactly what America needs now to drive towards the future. To ensure the next generation of financial, internet technology, and blockchain success is built in America, that our innovators come from the U.S., and that we have a future going forward. With that, Mr. Chair, I endorse the Clarity Act.
General yields. General A from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of Michigan, Ms. McDonald-Rivet, who serves on the House Agriculture Committee Subcommittee on Commodity Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development.
General A is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to voice support for the Clarity Act. While there is still work to be done, it's an important step in providing crucial and clear regulatory framework to the crypto industry. But let's break it down. Today, 1 in 6 U.S. adults, 17% of the population, are invested in or use cryptocurrency. That's 55 million Americans. There are more than $3 trillion U.S. dollars invested in the industry. It is dangerous and irresponsible that a market of this size and scope is currently operating without a clear regulatory framework. For consumers, innovators, and the stability of our nation's economy, the Clarity Act is an important first step forward. It protects consumers and equips assigned agencies with the appropriate authority to provide efficient and thorough oversight over digital asset markets. It also provides desperately needed certainty so that businesses can grow and evolve. I want to be clear, if clarity had been in place, the FTX market crash that caused their customers to lose $8 billion would not have happened. This bill strengthens our national security by giving regulators the tools they need to track cross-border transactions and stop digital assets from being used to evade sanctions or fund our adversaries. The bill is not perfect, and it does not resolve every issue. Like many of my colleagues, I am deeply concerned about the Trump family's potential conflicts of interest in using crypto to profit from the office of the presidency. That's why I voted for amendments to impose guardrails to stop elected officials from improperly profiting off the trades, and I will continue to push strongly for solutions to this problem. However, we cannot let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We stand at a critical moment where market structure is critical for our consumers, economy, and security, and the Clarity Act moves us meaningfully forward. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to expand for a minute on the important protections included in Clarity. The Clarity Act includes strong protections for the developers of software. Section 309 and 409 make it clear that neither the CFTC nor the SEC have the authority to require a person to register just because that person is developing, publishing, or distributing software. This is a critical protection rooted in our First Amendment that should be read expansively by the commissions. The creation of new decentralized finance protocols is also an important development that the Clarity Act seeks to protect. Both the CFTC and the SEC must carefully examine and understand DeFi, which is why we're requiring both commissions to undertake a robust study on the unique benefits and risks of DeFi. Through Clarity, Congress is making an unambiguous statement that DeFi is different and it should be treated differently from the centralized custodial intermediaries. Protecting this emerging technology is an essential purpose of the Clarity Act. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to recognize and yield to the gentleman from Indiana, a member of the Agriculture Committee, a member of the Commodity Markets, Digital Asset, and Rural Development Subcommittee, Mr. Mesmer, for 1 minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of the Clarity Act. America's innovative ecosystem has made our nation an investment magnet and development hub, but thus far our regulatory system has failed the digital assets industry. Under current framework, fraudsters go unpunished, consumers remain unprotected, and the best and brightest minds in the industry have picked up and left for other countries. The Clarity Act finally establishes distinct jurisdictional boundaries between the Securities Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, while also creating guardrails to incentivize and safeguard investment. The bill not only expands opportunities for Wall Street and Silicon Valley, it also provides great opportunities for Hoosier farmers by opening a new frontier for rural innovators and expanding access to capital in agricultural communities. The digital asset markets are in dire need of regulation, and the Clarity Act is the solution. I look forward to witnessing a new era of economic prosperity and technological advancement this bill will bring to America, and I yield back the remainder of my time.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes of my time to the distinguished colleague from the state of Alabama, Mr. Figures.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have listened to many of my colleagues' views on the issues before us today, and I respect them all, and I respect their views. And I don't disagree with many of the points that my colleagues that are in opposition that they're making, especially as it relates to executive conflict of interest concerns. But here's what I know. I know that the United States is lagging behind the rest of the world in regulating this industry. I know that the regulations in the Clarity Act are better than none at all in this industry. And I know that consumers will be better protected the day after this goes into effect than they were the day before. Now, is there more work to be done? Absolutely. And we should do that. But we cannot allow subjective ideas of perfection to override what are objectively steps in the right direction. And so this act is one that I support, the Clarity Act. And this is an important first step. And as we move forward, however, we must continue to make the necessary investments so that everyone can participate. Those are investments in technical training and education so that people have the knowledge and skills to actually understand and participate in a digital economy. And this is also a time to commit ourselves to ensuring that we do not leave underserved and rural communities behind. I represent a district that is geographically predominantly rural. We still struggle with issues like not having access to the internet in many counties that I represent. You cannot participate in or leverage the benefits of a digital economy if you can't get on the internet. That is a fact. And so we must stand up for these communities and bring broadband and internet expansion resources to every community that we possibly can. And so let's keep moving forward. Let's keep making sure that we are bringing everyone along with us. And I urge my colleagues to support this. Thank you. I yield
Gentleman
back.
yields. Is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the gentleman that just spoke for his remarks concerning the need for broadband, high-speed broadband. And my pledge as the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, we're back in September, we've got Farm Bill 2.0, which includes rural economic development and rural broadband. and we have to get that done. I'm pleased to yield to the gentleman from Georgia, a co-sponsor of the Clarity Act, Mr. Carter, for 1 minute.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to voice my support for the Clarity Act. The Clarity Act is a bill that will make clear laws to help better regulate digital assets and blockchain technology. This bill will ensure that future innovations in the financial world will happen here in the United States and not in foreign countries. We cannot allow our adversaries such as China to control the digital economy. The Clarity Act will help modernize financial laws to make innovation possible and clear up many opaque and sometimes contradictory laws. This bill delivers on President Trump's commitment to make the United States the crypto capital of the world, and I'm proud that we are paving the path towards American dominance in the digital future. Today, I again would like to give my support for the Clarity Act as it cements America as a hub for the world's financial innovation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you. I yield 2 minutes to my distinguished colleague from the state of New Jersey, Mr. Josh Gottheimer, who serves on the House Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairwoman Craig, for your excellent leadership. I rise in support of the bipartisan Clarity Act. This bill was made possible through a bipartisan effort that I was very proud to help lead with Chairman Hill and Congressman Stile. And it's an important one, because 1/5 of Americans own crypto. My state, New Jersey, proportionally ranks second nationwide in ownership of cryptocurrency. But while cryptocurrency has tremendous economic potential, we desperately need rules of the road to protect consumers and to ensure the success of American entrepreneurs and ensure that America leads the way, not other nations around the world, but that America leads the way in this growing space. The Clarity Act takes common sense steps to make crypto work for everyday users, including measures to stop snake oil salesmen and fraudsters and hucksters, and puts Trump's family's coin under regulation. This legislation supports American-led innovation by encouraging developers and entrepreneurs to build, invest, and create jobs in our country. Finally, this bill gives clarity to the SEC and the CFTC's role in crypto to work together efficiently to crack down on scammers and criminal activity. And after years of uncertainty, it finally says who should oversee what so that people in this space understand the direction it's going in, understand who's going to oversee what, and that consumers can be protected. I can't say that enough. Do you want this to be the Wild West and continue to be with uncertainty, or do we want to have clear rules of the road to protect consumers? Do we want to do something or nothing? Is it perfect, as you've heard today? No, it's not perfect, but few pieces of legislation we bring here are. The question is, will it do good? Will it make sure that we look after people who are involved in this space? Will it ensure that America succeeds and grows? That's the question, and to do nothing means that we will ensure that Trump's coin has no oversight. Why would we want that? We will ensure that no consumer is protected if we do nothing. We want to protect American consumers. That's our job. This legislation does that. I urge my colleagues to support this critical, common sense, bipartisan legislation. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, may I require how much time I have remaining?
Gentleman has 5.5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentlewoman from Minnesota actually has 2. 2.5.
Mr. Speaker,
We'll give her another 30
pleased
seconds.
to yield to the gentleman from Tennessee, the Vice Chair of the Commodity Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development Subcommittee, also a member of the House Financial Services Committee, a very busy man, Mr. Rose, for 1 minute.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the Clarity Act, which provides long overdue updates aimed at protecting the future of digital assets, encouraging growth, and protecting American consumers. The days of stifling this emerging industry through litigation and rogue rulemaking must end. The Securities and Exchange Commission, under former Chair Gary Gensler, went far outside the agency's statutory mandate in many ways, especially with cryptocurrencies. The Clarity Act will strengthen transparency and accountability for consumers. It will require developers to provide accurate disclosures with details about the asset project's operation, ownership, and structure. It requires brokers and dealers to disclose important information to investors, to hold their own funds separate from their customers' funds, and to report any conflicts of interest. This bill ensures Americans know where they're putting their money, and it gets government out of the way of growth and innovation. Let's pass the Clarity Act for the good of this country. I yield back.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no other speakers at the moment, and I continue to reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman Pennsylvania is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I yield to the gentleman from South Dakota, the chairman of the Commodity Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development Subcommittee, Mr. Johnson, for 3 minutes.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's been such an honor to work with GT, French, Angie, Don, Brian, and so many others on something that's real. It's sometimes hard to separate the real from the fake in this town. That's certainly true for digital assets. NFTs, meme coins, these generate tremendous attention, and they can pull our gaze away from what really matters. Here's what matters. Blockchain technology, Web3, will transform every single industry in the same way that the internet has transformed every single industry over the last 30 years. And that transformation will happen much faster than people realize. If we can keep government from continuing to screw this up. This is not about buying bubble gum with Bitcoin. This is about blockchain innovation happening here rather than overseas. About more liquid capital markets. About small businesses creating new services and products. About removing friction from transactions for every single American. And about protecting consumers, so the debacles like the FTX meltdown never happen again. We tend to overstate the impact of what we do in this town. Everything is historic, even when it's not. But this is different. This is huge. Before I came to Congress, I was in the broadband industry, and the 1996 Telecom Act provided the regulatory certainty needed to launch the internet era. That was a watershed victory for this country, and my friends, we are here again. The regulatory certainty provided by this incredible bipartisan work product will launch a golden age of innovation and the golden age of digital assets. Today, now, this moment, this is a watershed victory for this country. Today, we do something real. And with that, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. Gentlelady from Minnesota is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Pennsylvania recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to close, yield myself the remainder of the time. I want to thank the gentleman from South Dakota for his remarks, and quite frankly, couldn't agree more. I also want to thank, again, my agriculture partner, Ranking Member Angie Craig with the Agriculture Committee, and Don Davis, and our leadership, and all those who are have the foresight to see that this is about the future. Well, it's about today, because there's companies that are struggling with this, but it's about more importantly the future of both the financial sector and the technological sector. And so a vote for clarity is a vote for America's future and America's leadership. And with that, I urge all my colleagues to vote yes on clarity. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, would like to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Chairman G.T. Thompson, and his team for working on this consumer protection legislation in a bipartisan manner. I believe bipartisan legislation is always preferable to partisan legislation. It's stronger, it's harder to undo when it has broad support and leadership changes. It's why I heard my chairman talk about the Farm Bill. I regret that it wasn't a bipartisan path through reconciliation for Farm Bill provisions, but I am optimistic that we can work together in many other areas. While I wait to see what the gentleman's got in store for us for farm programs left behind, I too agree that rural development is incredibly important, Mr. Speaker. I hope that the bipartisanship shown through the Clarity Act process can act as a reminder that we accomplish more and we go further when we work together. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield the remainder of my time.
Gentlelady yields. All time for debate on the bill has expired. The chair understands that the amendment number 1 will not be offered. Pursuant to the rule, previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. Question is on engrossment and the third reading on the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide for a system of regulation of the offer and sale of digital commodities by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and for other purposes.
Question is on the passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
Gentlelady requests the yeas and nays. They are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having arisen. Yeas and nays are ordered pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20. Further proceedings of this question will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Arkansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, good morning. Pursuant to House Resolution 580, I call up the bill S-1582 and ask for its immediate consideration in the House.
Clerk will report the title.
Senate 1582, an act to provide for the regulation of payment stablecoins and for other purposes.
Pursuant to House Resolution 580, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. The gentleman from Arkansas and the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on this bill.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Senate Genius Act, and I thank my colleague and longtime friend, Senator Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, for his leadership in ushering this bipartisan bill through the United States Senate. Around the world, payment systems are undergoing an evolution. New technologies are modernizing legacy infrastructure and unlocking innovative solutions to improve efficiency, reduce costs, and expand access to financial services. Members of this House Financial Services Committee have long recognized the promise of payment stablecoins and have worked since 2022 to establish a legislative framework. Last Congress, under the leadership of former Chairman Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, the committee passed the Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act of 2023. This bill provided for bank and non-bank pathways for issuers to obtain regulatory approval, preserve state-level oversight, and set standards for reserve composition, audits, and sound risk management. When the 119th Congress started in January we picked up this effort in close coordination with the Senate Banking Committee, and our base legislation and our legislative work over the past 2 years has laid that foundation for the progress made in both the House and the Senate. Today we have an opportunity to send stablecoin legislation to President Trump's desk. This is a multi-Congress priority item, and it ensures American competitiveness, strong guardrails for our consumers. We should not, Mr. Speaker, squander that opportunity. This priority has been agreed to by both President Biden with his executive order and President Trump in his executive order 14178. Through multiple versions of stablecoin legislation, the House and Senate have shared ideas and crafted workable approaches, and our joint efforts before us helped enhance the legislation on the floor this morning. I want to recognize the hard work of my friends in the Senate to get the core fundamentals of what payment stablecoin legislation demand. I also want to recognize the diligence and thoughtful work of my colleagues here in the House, including the chairman of our Digital Assets, Financial Technology, and Artificial Subcommittee, Brian Stile, who championed and worked through our committee through markup in successfully designing, writing, and passing in committee the STABLE Act. I thank my House colleagues for their principled approach to key policies that guided and distinguished our effort, particularly around state regime oversight, the reserve composition, the anti-money laundering and territorial integrity issues around stablecoins, and finally, the corporate structure of issuers. Furthermore, it's my firmly held belief that only by enacting payment stablecoin legislation and, Mr. Speaker, I repeat, and comprehensive market structure reform in this Congress, like we just debated a few minutes ago, the Clarity Act, only by passing both will this Congress fully usher in the era of digital finance and ensure that consumers are protected whenever they engage with digital assets. I urge all my colleagues to join me in supporting this bill and sending it forward to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for President Trump to sign into law, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from California is recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume. 2 weeks ago, Republicans boasted about how they would provide billionaires with tax cuts they don't need by stripping health care from 17 million Americans, shuttering hospitals across the country, and starving 12 million families, including millions of children. These billionaires are the same individuals who proudly gave millions of dollars to President Trump's campaign, literally bought votes during the last election, and even sponsored Stalinist military parades to celebrate the president's birthday. No one should be surprised that these same Republicans' next order of business is to validate, legitimize, and endorse the Trump family's corruption and efforts to sell the White House to the highest bidder. SD 1582, the so-called Genius Act, establishes a woefully deficient federal framework for dollar-denominated payment stablecoins. In the United States, stablecoins are a form of digitized private money. Unlike other types of crypto, these coins claim to always maintain their value, often one coin for $1. Nevertheless, that promise of stability is precisely what causes stablecoins to be the subject to bank-like runs where the public rushes to sell their stablecoins at the first whiff of instability, making a bit of bad news into a full-blown financial crisis. It was for this reason that when I was chairwoman of the committee, I sought to create a federal framework to oversee these stablecoins and ensure that consumers are protected. I worked with the Biden administration and former Republican Chairman Patrick Henry to craft legislation. We achieved that goal, and I posted that legislation earlier this year. We wanted to create a strong federal system to oversee this type of crypto market that protected consumers, our national security, and financial stability. Unfortunately, the election of Donald Trump ended those bipartisan efforts and brought a significant new challenge to stablecoins. The Trump family's brazen corruption using crypto to sell access in exchange for official acts. And it just so happens that those stablecoins are one of the main vehicles Trump is using to make his corrupt crypto billions. The Trump family, crypto company, World Liberty Financial, launched a stablecoin called USD1 in April. And shortly after that, the Abu Dhabi-backed investment from MGX brought $2 billion of Trump's coin to make an investment in Binance, a company that had been under investigation for numerous legal violations. Trump and his family will make tens of millions of dollars just on that transaction alone, from the interest earnings alone. That's Abu Dhabi's money. More concerningly, by passing this bill, Congress will be telling the world that Congress is okay with corruption, okay with foreign companies buying influence, okay with criminals buying Trump coins to seek pardons and beneficial treatment. Surely, each of you can see how this is blatant conflict of interest, right? Well, Democrats and the rest of America does as well. It is why I introduced the Stop Trump in Crypto Act to ban the president, vice president, and members of Congress from crypto corruption. If we do not ban elected officials in S 1582, including the president or vice president, from crypto corruption, each of us will be complicit. And let me be clear on this point, because there's been a lot of misinformation. This bill has a policy statement that elected officials, like members of Congress and senators, as well as government officials, cannot issue their own stablecoins. But do you know who Republicans did not ban? Now get this straight. The president and the vice president, they're the only elected officials that can have a crypto business. Why are the Republicans protecting the president to make billions and billions more dollars? Don't just take my word for it. Earlier this week, Chairman Hill confirmed as much at the Rules Committee. Anyone who says that the bill stops the president's company from issuing stablecoins is not telling the truth. And yet, even if we adopted such a ban, the Genius Act, sent over by the Senate and apparently unable to be amended, is still bad public policy. S 1582 creates the appearance of a federal framework for stablecoins, but it does not provide the federal government with the full authority it needs to ensure that all stablecoin issuers comply with the law. The bill also creates risk for consumers who will be stuck in a lengthy bankruptcy process if a stablecoin ever fails. Additionally, it leaves the door open for foreign firms that present a major national security threat, including targets of sanctions, all to appease those in the Trump family's inner circle, which has ties to those shady entities. Yes, I'm talking about Tether, the foreign stablecoin issuer. Everyone knows has been used in terrorist financing, organized crime schemes, and other horrible acts, but which the Commerce Secretary, has close ties with. But let me give you one more example why this bill is just bad for America. The very heart of this bill is that stablecoins will, in fact, be stable because they will be backed one-to-one with solid, safe assets. But I invite anyone to read the bill. While some of the reserves are cash and short-term Treasury securities, this bill allows for uninsured deposits. We already know how dangerous these deposits are. When Silicon Valley Bank failed, Circle, the largest stablecoin today, had $3 billion locked up in uninsured deposits and needed the federal government to rescue it. But that isn't all. A stablecoin issuer is also permitted to hold Bitcoin as reserves. That's because someone added language in this bill late in the night in the process that added new definitions and language to the bill. The language allows for a stablecoin issuer to use any money received under repurchase agreements that are, quote, a means of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a foreign government. Do you know what Trump's favorite strongman, the dictator of El Salvador, adopted as a legal currency? Bitcoin. So this highly volatile cryptocurrency will now be eligible to be a reserve backing on your stablecoins. It is truly absurd and dangerous and will lead to consumers losing their money and the taxpayers being called on to bail out the financial system. It is for all of these reasons that I submitted several amendments to this bill, none of which were made in order by Republicans because the president has rejected any conflict of interest language that binds him. One interesting point is that even Chairman Hill himself inserted language at the end of the so-called Clarity Act that the House is separately considering this week that actually amends the Genius Act. You heard me right. Rather than amend the Genius Act, which our own chairman saw had problems, he put his changes at the end of the Clarity Act. You may be asking why he would do that. He could just offer his amendments to the Genius Act. The reason is House Republican leadership has given up our power as the United States House of Representatives to work the will of members on behalf of our constituents and make changes to any legislation that the Senate sends us. Instead, we're simply taking the language directly from the Senate with no amendments, even when the chairman and other House members know that this bill is flawed. Unfortunately, because President Trump demanded the bill be passed without any changes, that's what the Republican Congress will do. One of Chairman Hill's changes to the Genius Act addresses a key concern I've had from the beginning, which is that Facebook and any other big tech company should not be allowed to issue their own stablecoin. That would violate a long-standing separation of banking and commerce in financial regulation, and our chairman's amended language would help close this loophole. Unfortunately, the Genius Act allows Elon Musk, X, to issue its own stablecoin and creates a pathway for Facebook to do the same. For these reasons and many more, I strongly oppose this bill. I yield back. I reserve the balance of my time.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. Yep. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to address a few of those points. One, I'm so delighted to hear it sounds as if my friend, the ranking member from California, in fact, will now vote for clarity this afternoon on the House floor, since she highlights some of my suggested changes to Genius. I appreciate her remarks on that. But here's the big picture, Mr. Speaker. These bills, Clarity and Genius, are about protecting American consumers, protecting investments, bringing capital back to the United States, making the U.S. a fintech leader in payments and in digital assets. Consumers are protected. The rules are straightforward. All issuers of a payment stablecoin are treated the same with high standards, high regulatory oversight. And so I want to make sure that those at home following on C-SPAN get the record straight. Let me yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, who for years has been a partner in crafting a digital assets approach that will make America more competitive. Mr. Thompson's recognized for 1 minute.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to stand before you and support the Genius Act that actually garnered 68 bipartisan votes in the Senate. I appreciate those senators. They demonstrated an awareness of the needs of the modern financial sector here in the United States. I congratulate Chairman Hill and Chairman Stile and thank them for their work on the stablecoin legislation. The Genius Act represents an important step for this Congress in establishing the United States as a leader in the digital asset space. With a market structure bill that we had previously considered and for which I've had the honor of co-sponsoring with my colleagues on the Financial Services Committee, will provide an important safeguards around the utility of vital digital assets in the next generation of global finance. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to submit additional remarks for the record and to clarify congressional intent on the effect the bill may have on the ability to list certain derivatives products.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from California is
I
recognized.
now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Digital Assets, Financial Technology, and Artificial Intelligence.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I rise in strong opposition to the so-called Genius Act. Mr. Speaker, this bill has never even been considered or debated in the House Financial Services Committee or the Agricultural Committee, the committees of jurisdiction, which is the usual practice in this body. I guess this is what passes for genius these days. Republican leadership has once again caved into President Trump's demands for quickly pushing crypto legislation. President Trump just yesterday posted, "Pass the Genius Act ASAP." I guess there's no need to debate it or read it or amend it, just pass it. Now, you might think that Republicans might be cautious about taking financial policy direction from someone who has a side hustle selling baseball hats and Bibles and who has filed for bankruptcy 6 times in the past 20 years. But sadly, you would be mistaken. This bill significantly weakens the U.S. dollar, which is the global reserve currency and provides a huge competitive advantage for our country. This bill allows a complete takeover of our financial system by big tech companies, by allowing these massive companies to issue their own cryptocurrencies. For example, Google with 3.5 billion daily users. Meta has over 2 billion active daily users, not to mention Amazon or X or Walmart. Several of these companies have already indicated they're planning to launch crypto stablecoins if this bill becomes law. And those companies can easily compel or incentivize users to move away from the dollar and away from traditional banks and into these so-called stablecoins. President Trump's own stablecoin is set to become one of the top 10 stablecoins after Abu Dhabi announced a $2 billion investment in World Liberty Financial, which is a joint venture between the Trump family, his sons, and Steve Witkoff and his family. You may recall that Steve Witkoff is Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, where Abu Dhabi is located. Nothing in this bill prevents the clear conflicts of interest and violations of ethics laws by President Trump. And the worst aspect of this bill is the danger and risk that it puts on the backs of the U.S. taxpayer, because this will not end well, and nothing in this bill prevents a taxpayer bailout of crypto. If we really wanted to protect the taxpayer, we could require that crypto companies that are pushing these bills absorb the losses if they fail. That would seem fair. Yet despite several attempts to have amendments included in the bill that would protect the taxpayer from paying for crypto bailouts, my Republican colleagues repeatedly refused. We've seen in the past, in 2008, when the last version of financial innovation blew up, collateral debt obligations and other complex derivatives. It was the taxpayer that had to pay to clean up that mess, to the tune of about $700 billion, while bankers who created the mess, they got bonuses. We should not let that happen again. And I urge my friends on the other side, my colleagues on our side, to defend the U.S. taxpayer and vote no on this bill.
Gentleman's time's
And I
expired.
yield back. I thank the gentleman.
The gentleman's reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I really have to say I believe the Genius Act is an important component for preserving and enhancing the United States dollar as the reserve currency around the world. I now want to yield 3 minutes to a gentleman who's been instrumental in our success in crafting digital asset legislation, our Majority Whip, Mr. Emmer of Minnesota.
The gentleman from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In November, the American people elected the most pro-innovation, pro-crypto Congress and president in American history. Following his historic victory, President Trump gave Congress a mandate to pass landmark legislation creating rules of the road for the digital asset ecosystem. The Genius Act is the first step in fulfilling that promise. I would like to applaud my Senate colleagues, Chairman Scott, Senators Hagerty, Lummis, and Gillibrand, for energizing an often calcified Senate to send over the Genius Act. Furthermore, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Speaker Johnson and Leader Scalise, along with Chairman Hill and Chairman Thompson, for putting this bill on the House floor today for a vote. Fundamentally, any stablecoin bill is about national security. It's about preserving and extending the dollar's dominance as the world's reserve currency. People want to transact in dollars because we have the strongest and most reliable economy and government in the world. It's the currency the world counts on to do business, and the United States' global position relies on that status. The United States cannot afford to sit on the sidelines. If we fail to lead in this space, we risk leaving the door open for authoritarian regimes like China to advance its state-controlled digital currencies. This bill is a globally competitive regulatory framework for dollar-backed stablecoins, one that encourages domestic innovation and brings transaction volume back into the United States visibly and under our control. As we saw over the last 4 years under the Biden administration, regulation by enforcement not only created uncertainty, but also pushed companies offshore. A clear and defined stablecoin framework like that in the Genius Act keeps these innovators here at home and brings back all those who left. This is not a perfect bill, but it is a perfect bill for this moment. Congress must keep its eyes on the finish line and send the Genius Act to President Trump's desk this week. Bottom line, the Genius Act is a pro-innovation, pro-freedom, and pro-growth piece of legislation. It's a bipartisan solution to a global challenge, empowering U.S. markets to lead, not follow. Let's pass this bill and secure American financial leadership in the global digital economy. I encourage all my friends in this body to unequivocally vote yes on this bill, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Minnesota yields back.
I reserve.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I'll yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Capital Markets.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
It is customary when we consider major legislation to give credit to those who created the bill. The ghost of Sam Bankman-Fried looms above this auditorium. He is the genius behind the Genius Act, and one can only hope that he's able to watch C-SPAN on a black and white television set in his prison cell. You don't have to be a genius to know that this bill is an attack on working families. That's why the AFL-CIO says no, and they are scoring it. They call it stablecoin. It's not stable. It's not a coin. It's a money market account that under this law must pay 0% interest. So who wants to forgo a 4% rate of return and get a 0% return in stablecoin? Those who are desperate for what cryptocurrency offers. Cryptocurrency literally means hidden money, and these stablecoins are exempt from the anti-money laundering provisions. Thus, it meets the needs perfectly of drug dealers, human traffickers, sanctions evaders, those who are hiding assets from their former spouses, and tax evaders. And just to be clear, the Republicans rejected unanimously in committee a provision to prevent mixers. Mixers are devices whose sole purpose is to defeat even top law enforcement efforts pursuant to a warrant, and under this bill, they
the mixers will be used to defeat law enforcement. Republicans claim to be against crime in the streets, but they're creating a device whose sole purpose is to facilitate crime in the suites. Page 43 of this bill contains a provision maintaining the eligibility of stablecoins for bailouts under a facility created under Section 13.3 of the Federal Reserve Act. Now, Jay Powell won't bail out stablecoin, but the next guy will. Stablecoin marketers are going to tell investors that if they ever have a problem, they're going to get bailed out. And after all, crypto has all the power in Congress because it is the #1 source of super PAC independent expenditures. Last year, crypto did more super PAC expenditures than big oil and big pharma times 5. This bill is designed to enrich President Donald Trump. Even Richard Nixon never thought of printing up baskets of monopoly money and selling them for cash. Trump thought of it, and he's doing it electronically. Abu Dhabi has announced they're investing $2 billion in Trump's stablecoin. $2 billion in Trump's hands where he has to pay nothing, 0% on the loan. He invests the money, he makes $2 million a week up until Abu Dhabi demands its money back, which they're never going to do as long as our foreign policy meets the needs of Abu Dhabi. Republicans rejected unanimously an amendment to prevent taxpayer money from being used to buy
Gentleman's
crypto.
time has expired.
If you're voting for this bill, you're voting for taxpayer money to go into buying Trump coin. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the President. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to recognize the chair of our subcommittee on digital assets, financial technology, artificial intelligence, who's crafted the STABLE Act, which is the base text that led to this joint good work between the House and Senate. Mr. Stile of Wisconsin.
The gentleman from
3 minutes.
Wisconsin is recognized.
I thank my good friend, the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Hill. I rise in support of the GENIUS Act. The legislation brings clarity, consumer protections, and American leadership to the evolving world of payment stablecoins. Stablecoin legislation has been in the works for over 4 years and has been called for by Democratic and Republican administrations. The status quo fails to protect consumers from fraud. That's an untenable situation in a market growing by the billions. For too long, the United States has operated without a clear federal framework for dollar-backed payment stablecoins, leaving consumers vulnerable to fraud, innovators in limbo, and our global competitiveness at risk. That's why I'm proud to have introduced stablecoin legislation in the House and worked alongside my colleagues in the Senate to make the legislation reaching the President's desk as strong as possible. That's why I'm urging a yes vote on the GENIUS Act. The bipartisan, bicameral legislation creates a robust framework for payment stablecoin issuance in the United States. It encourages the innovation and development of Web3 businesses here in the United States. It establishes clear rules to ensure that consumers are protected and businesses have clear regulations to responsibly participate in the digital asset ecosystem. By requiring issuers to maintain a one-to-one reserve in cash and high-quality liquid assets like U.S. Treasuries, consumers know what they're getting and are protected. GENIUS has strong anti-money laundering, operational risk, and governance standards in place to prevent abuse, reinforce market integrity, and create an even playing field with other financial institutions. By passing the GENIUS Act, the House will be sending it to the President's desk. Congress will be sending a clear message. The United States will dominate the future of financial innovation. We'll protect consumers, support innovation, and defend the central role of the U.S. dollar in global commerce. This bill, we're not just responding to a moment. We're building a foundation for the future of finance in the Web3 world. Payment stablecoin legislation is critical to this foundation. If we want to become the digital asset hub of the world, we must enact a comprehensive framework for the digital asset ecosystem. I urge my colleagues to support both GENIUS and Clarity and send a message that America leads in financial innovation and does so with integrity, strength, and a firm commitment to protecting the people we serve. I yield back.
The gentleman from Wisconsin yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Costin, who is also the vice-ranking member of the Financial Services Committee.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I was to describe Jeffrey Epstein as a nice family man who works in finance, you might question why I was saying that. Well, if someone says that something that is neither a coin nor stable is a stable coin, you might question why they're saying that, because they aren't stable. Terra, which was a stable coin, collapsed to 30 cents and wiped out $40 billion in investor value. That was an algorithmic stable coin. More recently, as the ranking member has noted, USDC, a so-called stable coin, fell to 88 cents and only exists today because taxpayers bailed them out. These are some of the reasons why central bankers last week issued a warning that stablecoins threaten global financial stability and need a much more restrictive regime than traditional finance. The Genius Act ignores all those experts and instead ties stablecoins into our financial system, but without the safeguards that are required by banks and investment companies. As the ranking member noted, this allows big tech companies to issue stablecoins, amass consumer data, at the same time we're gutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that protects consumers. It allows issuers to cherry pick the lightest touch regulator between the federal government and any of the 50 states. Rather than fixing the problems created when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, it makes them worse by saying that you can have uninsured deposits, but if there is a run on a future Silicon Valley Bank, the stablecoin issuers have a superior claim over every single person in this room who has a legitimate deposit in that bank. My colleagues have said this has a one-to-one requirement, except that that's not audited. There's only an audit requirement for companies over $50 billion in asset, which is only 2 stablecoins. So Donald Trump's stablecoin just has to say, I attest that there was value in here on the 30th day of the month, and you don't have an auditor. That ain't one-to-one certification. Finally, the Genius Act is a missed opportunity to limit foreign influence. We know that recently a convicted money launderer wrote the code so that the United Arab Emirates could buy $2 billion of Trump's stablecoin, which allowed President Trump to earn $30 million on the transaction. Now this convicted felon...
Gentleman's time's expired.
To the gentleman, additional
And I should clarify here, the convicted felon I'm referring to is the guy for insider trading.
Time's expired.
An additional 15 seconds to the gentleman.
The convicted felon I'm referring to is the guy who ran Binance, not the president, but he's seeking a presidential pardon. So the Genius Act sets the stage for an exponential crisis and allows the president to continue cheapening the office for his own financial gain, and I urge a strong no.
Gentleman yields. Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities towards the president. Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
I thank the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the Vice Chairman of our full committee, Mr. Heisinger of Michigan.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today is a good day for innovation. It's a good day for free markets, entrepreneurs, and consumer choice. It's a good day for American digital leadership. And Mr. Speaker, after years of debate, and frankly, as I was chair of the Capital Markets Subcommittee in 2017 and 2018, holding hearings on crypto assets, Congress has finally recognized the unique nature of stablecoin products. Under this bill, we established a regulatory framework that targets the activity, not the technology. And after years of indecision, Americans finally have an administration that is ready to embrace those products. The time to reassert American leadership in the digital asset space is now. The Genius Act acknowledges that stablecoins can address inefficiencies in the U.S. payment system. It acknowledges that maintaining the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency should always be at the forefront of any decision that we have. And it acknowledges that the private sector must lead the way, fostering innovation and competition. And finally, it acknowledges that a clear regulatory...
I yield the gentleman 15 more seconds.
Gentleman's got 50 more seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, at the end of this, finally, it acknowledges that a clear regulatory framework led by the United States is needed to usher in this modern technology. We're at an inflection point, folks, and when it comes to digital assets, I urge my colleagues to seize this moment by supporting this important legislation. I yield back.
Gentleman from Michigan yields back. Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Velasquez, who is also the ranking member of the Small Business Committee.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, gentlelady, for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in opposition to the Genius Act. From the beginning, I have said Congress needs to tackle stablecoin legislation. But we cannot pretend this is happening in a vacuum. We are debating a framework for stablecoins while the President, his family, and members of his administration are personally invested in this market and directly profiting from it. 3 days before taking office, President Trump launched his own meme coin. When the coin's value collapsed, his insiders cashed out. Everyday investors were left holding the bag. It is estimated they lost over $2 billion, while the Trump circle walked away with more than $350 million. And now his family firm, World Liberty Financial, has launched its own stablecoin, once again netting the president's family tens of millions of dollars. The administration is rolling back enforcement and reshaping family policy to give this business interest a leg up. These are such clear-cut conflict of interest, and yet this bill does nothing to address them. It doesn't bar the president or cabinet officials from holding financial stakes in stablecoin issuers. It doesn't address the foreign investors piling into these ventures. It doesn't even try to draw a line between public office and private gain. This isn't a framework for innovation. It's a framework for more corruption. If we are serious about protecting consumers, about protecting our markets, we have to start with ethics. This bill fails that basic
The gentlewoman's
test.
time has
I urge
expired.
my colleagues to vote no.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this bill, the Genius Act, and the bill we debated a few minutes ago, the Clarity Act, are all about consumer protection. There are no rules federally across the board in the digital asset space at all now. That's why we've seen consumers hurt by the lack of a regulatory framework. And so I have to say, Mr. Speaker, in total contrast to my friends on the other side of the aisle, that's what we're all here for today. Now, Mr. Speaker, I appreciate your continuing reminder to the members in the chamber from engaging in personalities. But it has become a part of our morning routinely. So I have to inquire how long we're going to let this go on, Mr. Speaker. I want to make sure this chamber, all the members of the chamber, adhere to Rule 17. Mr. Speaker, I now call on the gentleman, our distinguished chairman of our subcommittee from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, who leads our subcommittee on financial institutions from Kentucky. Mr. Barr is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you.
Mr. Barr, the gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I rise today in strong support of the passage of the Genius Act, and I want to thank Chairman Hill for his extraordinary leadership, not just in this Congress, but for a long time advocating for this moment. He deserves a tremendous amount of credit for persevering and working and marshaling bipartisan, bicameral support. And I want to thank him for his terrific leadership. I want to thank the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile, for being a subject matter expert and working in a bipartisan way to build a bipartisan coalition for this moment. And there's been a lot, Mr. Speaker, made in this term of Congress about the one big, beautiful bill. And it's a historic piece of legislation, no doubt, and it's going to supercharge our economy. It's jet fuel for our economy. It's tax cuts, the biggest tax cuts we've ever seen in this country's history. But I would argue, with all respect, that arguably the most important, most transformational piece of legislation in this Congress are these bills we're talking about here today, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act. It is paramount that we send this historic piece of legislation, the Genius Act, to the President's desk, because this bill is the first of its kind in creating a regulatory framework for the future for stablecoin issuance in the United States to revolutionize finance and payments in this country and around the globe. Not only will this cement us, the United States, for decades to come as leaders and innovators in the digital asset space, but it will protect, importantly, protect the U.S. dollar's dominance and increase demand in our Treasury market. In the Genius Act, stablecoins become pegged to the U.S. dollar and backed by high-quality liquid assets. So, in stark contrast to what my friend, the gentleman from Illinois, was arguing, this actually prevents these other so-called stablecoins from actually thriving in the marketplace. That you're going to have stablecoins that actually are stable. That's why we need the bill. The gentleman is actually making the argument for us. The gentleman from Illinois. He's making the argument for why he should support the Genius Act because of non-stable stablecoins that are out there. Those products will lose ground in the marketplace after we pass the Genius Act. It will ensure that consumers are protected while reaping the benefits of blockchain technology. The Genius Act will allow for scalability to occur in the stablecoin marketplace, ensuring American consumers and businesses have access to this innovative product. Both banks and non-banks can issue stablecoins under the Genius Act, bringing together the best actors in both the traditional finance space and the new era of digital finance. The Genius Act provides that all appropriate